Like for light bulbs, we have the technology to ensure that light bulbs virtually last an entire life, like entire lifetime for a human being. But we don't use it. Why don't we use it? Well, because all the light bulb manufacturers would go out of business if that was the case. AI can do your homework. Now what? Why everything you buy is worse
So
now?
have you all noticed that everything kind of sucks now? And I don't mean like the general state of the world. I mean like the stuff we buy is just like a little bit worse than it was 10 years ago. And I really started thinking about this because my coworker Izzy wrote about how she had to replace a bra.
So I'm gonna do what any normal person would do, which is buy the exact same thing from the exact same place.
And then after a few weeks, it just kind of
fell apart. So this kind of started me on like this journey of like, okay, I'm hearing anecdotally from like so many people that I talk to like in my life, from coffee machines, phones, computers, sweaters.
They all tear or break or like explode way sooner than they used to. So what's going on? And is there a way to climb out from under this pile of consumer trash?
Manufactured obsolescence.
So let's talk about this in the most basic of terms, starting with the design process. When a company wants to make a thing, let's say like a jacket, there are three main factors to consider. Functionality, does it work? Appearance, does it look good? And manufacturability, is it easy and fairly inexpensive to make a lot of this product? Generally, a good product will have a good blend of these three things. But in recent years, this process has been thrown off balance. Let's look at clothes, for example. In the past, if you needed a new jacket, you used to go to a tailor, get measured, choose a material, and have it made. Then for decades, instead of going to a tailor for a jacket, we went to department stores and bought things that were mass-produced. By the 80s and 90s, we had tons of options in stores to choose from. And now, many of us just kind of go online, click add to cart, and buy a product without ever seeing it in person. But it's not just how we buy, it's how often we buy. And for that, we can kind of blame this man.
Ernest Elmo, yeah, incredible name.
Bro,
in the
it's like
1930s during the Great Depression.
This is like shrinkflation. For those of you who don't know, shrinkflation is when, like, let's say Lay's, a bag of Lay's chips is $5. And it is, let's say, I don't fucking know, 30 ounces. I don't know how many ounces it is, right? Lay's will then turn around and still sell you a bag of chips for $5, but this time it's giving you 27 ounces, okay? If there were 30 potato chips and now there are 27 potato chips, but it's still $5 in the bag, then that is shrinkflation. You're paying more for a singular price of Lay's potato chip. Planned obsolescence, manufactured obsolescence is kind of like that as well. This video is boring as fuck, man. Well, you're getting ass fucked by every company and not realizing why it's happening. So at least, you know, maybe you can learn a thing or two instead of, I don't know, being a dumb guy and continuously being fucking dumb. You know what I mean? You're here to learn.
He wrote this paper that was like, okay, like the government should really like support this idea of planned obsolescence.
Except he didn't call it planned obsolescence. He called it consumer engineering. Remember that jacket you bought? Well, it's a new season and it's out of style. Buttons are out, zippers are in. So you buy something new, but not because there was anything physically wrong with the original.
That's why it's called consumer engineering, right? Like it's up here in the brain.
And we've been living this way for decades, so now we all want the next best thing all the time. And that demand has spun out of control. Today, we are surrounded.
The speed of certain trend cycles and the fact that they're geared towards like these micro communities, like Stanley cups, when like maybe a year ago it was like hydro flasks.
The result is that we buy a lot. A survey done in 2021 found that nearly 40% of UK consumers buy clothing as often as once a month. The UN reports that between the year 2000 and 2014, the
It's not all mental, shit just breaks too. No, that's not true. Especially because we have the technology, like for light bulbs. We have the technology to ensure that light bulbs virtually last an entire life, like entire lifetime for a human being. But we don't use it. Why don't we use it? Well, because all the light bulb manufacturers would go out of business if that was the case. So you're wrong. This is stuff that would not break. This is stuff that technically would not fucking break, or at least would last a lifetime that is breaking way faster. One area where you kind of don't see that One area where you kind of don't see that is I guess cars, and even that's changing, because cars back in the day were supposed to last you a fucking multiple lifetimes because they have to be super, super safe. Obviously, there were technological advances that were made in recent years that made cars even more safe than they were before, but I was thinking the concept can be applied to electronics. Guess not. Yes. Okay. Here. Fuck the light bulb. Great example. A phenomenal example of this. If I recall correctly, long-lasting light bulbs are way less efficient. There's no real reason to not just LEDs. They last a lot longer and more efficient. Okay, here. A great example of this is, have you noticed that when you buy a laptop back in the day, if you had it for over 5 years, 6 years, right? All of a sudden on a 6th year, the battery or the charging aspect of the laptop would break, okay? And it was only one part of the laptop. The laptop is perfectly fine otherwise, but you could no longer charge it. The port would break. And then if you tried to go to a repair person, fixing the laptop would be almost as costly as buying a new one. So at that point, getting a new battery would be almost as costly as buying a new laptop. So at that point, it's like, it just makes sense that you would buy a new laptop. Now, obviously, that time frame has changed, and it's now every 2 years. And that is because, first of all, the battery breaking fast is planned obsolescence. They have the capacity to make batteries that last longer. It's just that if one aspect of the computer fails, most people would rather go and get a new one instead of seeking out cheaper alternatives to fix one single part of the computer. But of course, with right to repair being a contentious subject for capital owners, and also on top of that, Apple churning out constantly new product that, like, on the software side directly try to destroy whatever technological marvel you have in your hand, as long as it's like over 2 years, 3 years old. You arrive at this fucking problem.
Average person was buying 60% more clothing, and each item was only kept half as long. So we want to buy a lot of stuff fast, and because we replace our stuff so often, we don't really want to spend a lot of money on it, which has an effect too.
People aren't willing to pay more for something they have purchased a while ago. So like if I paid $30 for a bra 10 years ago, it would be really hard for me to buy it at $50. Even though in the last 10 years, labor costs have risen.
So what we're left with
putting
is
new
an
lights in
incredibly
the
fast cycle of
studio.
demand for low-cost products. And here's what that looks like. In order to speed up manufacturing, companies have to either hire more people, alter how the product is made, or both. But they also have to keep prices low enough for consumers to keep buying. So they may start swapping materials, like cotton or silk, for a cheaper synthetic material, or rely on a more basic stitching pattern that maybe just doesn't hold as well. So if after 10 years, you're still paying the same price, or close to the same price, for a product that looks the same, well, something had to change. So you might say, okay, Kim, fashion trends are moving too fast and we buy too much stuff. I get it, but why does my washing machine suck? And that's a great question. Let's talk about technology. When things like computers first became part of our daily lives, it made a lot of sense to upgrade devices pretty often.
There was actually very big differences in what a device did that's 2 years old versus one that was brand new in the market. There was just big leaps.
This is Gay Gordon-Byrne. She directs a consumer advocacy group called the Repair Association.
You know, if you had a 2-year-old thing, you probably couldn't do half the cool stuff that the other guy could do. So that kind of fueled the replacement cycle, because you really did get something better in terms of functionality.
For example, when the iPhone was first made, it was a major breakthrough. Subsequent phones up to a point responded to major technological leaps, like look at the difference between the 3GS and the 4. The iPhone 4 had a way better resolution and a front-facing camera. For a while, these major leaps between models was the norm for technology. But we're not making those giant changes as often anymore. Instead, partly to make us want to buy more things, companies make very minor adjustments year after year. So the dryer you own may now play a fun little song at the end of the cycle instead of screaming. And now, as devices advanced and got increasingly complicated, there was another problem for consumers.
All these things started to come into the world. They didn't come in with repair tools. They came in to be thrown away.
Basically, when this stuff breaks, it's often intentionally impossible to repair.
Because if you buy something that has a computer chip in it or a circuit board or whatever, you probably can't make one in your garage. So you're very reliant on what the manufacturer will agree to sell. And very often they don't agree to sell parts and tools and diagnostics or even give you a diagram.
But sometimes it really just is impossible to fix because they cut corners just like in fashion, replacing metal and screws with plastic and glue. And these kind of issues apply across the board in technology, from your phone to toasters to blenders to electric wheelchairs to your car.
If you walk around your house or your
Apple used to literally slow down older phones. Apple first denied that it purposely slowed down iPhone batteries, then it said it did so to preserve battery life. And what did they get for it? $113 million. It's nothing. $113 million to Apple is like if you got half of a cent. If someone was like, dude, I can't believe you. Here's a half of a fucking cent. I'm 100% a battery gate believer. Someone in the chat immediately, an Apple dick writer said it's not real. I'm 100% a believer. I experienced it. Fuck you. Eventually, in December 2017, Apple did admit the battery slowdowns aimed at addressing the device shutdown problem, leading the company to issue a rare apology. They literally fucking got caught, and then they admitted it. Have you reacted to this? It may violate terms of service. What the fuck? Why did you send that to me, dog? Why did I click that? I thought you were talking about some fucking like terms of service for Apple. No, it's fine. It's fine. Luckily, it was like censored and shit. But goddamn, bro. I thought we were talking about fucking Apple. I literally thought you were talking about Apple's terms of service. Stupid ass. You said Apple bro heard asshole. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, whatever. It's fine. It's fine. It was fine. Luckily it was censored. But yeah, that's planned obsolescence. Apple did it. Apple also, like, I mean, this is beyond planned obsolescence when you like actually slow down older products to force people to go and buy the new
your
one.
apartment and you start cataloging how many things you own that have chips in them, I think you'd be really surprised how big that lack of repair problem actually is.
I want people to feel hopeful. Yes, this is something that's like out of our control in some ways and not out of our control in others. I don't want you to feel guilty for like partaking in this system when like so many people even kind of brought up culturally to think in this way or to buy in this way.
Compared to other things that suck in the world, we actually have a surprising amount of control over this situation. With tech, fighting for the right to repair is actually extremely effective. New York State just passed a right to repair bill in 2022, and it's not perfect, but at least it's something. With fashion, stay away from microtrends and fast fashion as often as you can. Buy with intention and learn to take care of the things you do have.
Think of like your objects as having maintenance. Read those care labels.
As consumers, it's gonna take a little bit for us to sift through all the trash and retrain our brains a bit, but we can take small steps to take back control of the process. After all of this stuff is supposed to be made for us.
Yeah, Louis Rossman seems like a really fucking weird guy in many ways, but isn't he like a major right to repair guy? I respect the shit out of that. Yeah. See, that's one of those things where it's like, I don't give a fuck what your other opinions are. 100% I stand with you on that. The fact that like we have to even have advocacy for a right to repair is mind-boggling to me. God, this country sucks so much dog shit. Ugh.
Us. So let's make it clear what we want.
We have a map on our repair.org website where you can go find your state, click the picture, and it'll bring up basically a letter writing widget. You type in your address and it says, tell your repair story. And if
Where's weird opinions? I think he's like, isn't he like a libertarian of sorts? Someone will clip that with that context? What do you mean? Look, I've said this before. There are certain things that transcend like individual ideology. For me, I will always ride for motherfuckers that push for, no matter how crazy they are, calling Louis Rossman weird when he's openly always talking about his experiences with autism. Yeah, that's what I meant, dude. Thank you for nailing it down, chatter, because he's autistic and I'm being ableist. You call me. No, I'm saying that no matter what people's personal politics are, you need crazy dudes, right? You need crazy guys to make certain to meet certain political goals. He's exactly the type of crazy. You know what I mean? He's exactly the type of crazy you need to push for something like right to repair. And I will always respect him for that. And also, I think he has good privacy takes too, if I'm not mistaken. I hate it. I hate fucking.
Really?
I hate the fact that like John Deere is one of the worst offenders of this. I hate that like can't stop you. You just can't. This.
Imagine you are a mother and you have just left an abusive relationship, but you've got a good job and all you need to do is move you and your daughter into an apartment. You can pay the down payment, you can pay the last month's rent, you can see that I'm getting regularly paid and there's more than enough in the account. But they were like, if you don't have a credit score, we can't really look at you. She was categorically
Oh, I know all about this shit.
denied the ability to.
Don't turn your head to the right. It makes your pimple shine brighter than the sun. Oh, this kind of fucking like parasocial take makes me so unhinged angry. It makes me literally want to fucking claw my goddamn eyeballs out of my skull when I hear it. I'm trying to be as nice as I possibly can towards motherfuckers who say stuff like this. It's very rude. You're being rude. You're not being nice. Please don't do this, okay? You're so rude. It's rude. It's rude as fuck. It's like this weird, incredibly. No, don't ban the person. I'm gonna try to be as pleasant as possible. Okay? No, do not ban this person. I just want people to understand when you do that passive aggressive shit, you're literally just simply behaving in an incredibly passive aggressive way. You're not actually being helpful at all. Okay? It's just annoying. It's annoying. If someone did that to you at your fucking place of work, you'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I was having a good ass day. Now I have a shit ass day. Why is it like this? Yeah, you just threw a heart after saying, man, you look like shit today. Exactly. Anyway, bro, it was a joke. Yeah, it's upsetting is all I'm saying, okay? It's fucking upsetting. I think it's mean and upsetting.
To even apply for some of the apartment buildings.
Fred Wary is a sociologist at Princeton, and that story came from a woman he interviewed in San Francisco back in 2017. Today, there are an estimated 45 million Americans who don't have a credit score, and that can make it really difficult to rent an apartment or get car insurance or even get a job. When credit scores were invented just a few decades ago, they were hailed as a way to democratize lending, play down human judgment, and let computers make most of the decisions. In the United States today, credit scores have become essential. Not having one can basically lock you out of daily life, and having a low score can make life difficult too. So, how did we get here? What exactly are credit scores, and why do they keep so many people from accessing what they need? A credit score starts with a credit report. A record of some personal data points about us, like our zip code and...
No, this is not appropriate. Stop. Don't say shit like that either.
employment history, plus...
Everyone needs to chill out. Don't be so fucking ruthless to one another, okay, chatters? Jesus Christ.
our individual history of paying our debt obligations. Well, some of our debt obligations. See, only data supplied by big lending institutions like student loan servicers, mortgage lenders, credit card companies, and auto financiers end up on our credit reports. We might be paying our cell phone bills and our rent each month, but cell phone carriers and landlords don't share that information with these guys, the credit reporting agencies. There are 3, and each one has its own version of the credit history of more than 200 million people in the US. That data comes from institutions like credit card companies and student loan providers, who send information about our accounts to the credit reporting agencies. The type of loan, the balance, our payment history, and whether the loan has been sent to a collection agency. Then, credit scoring companies like FICO and VantageScore take that information and feed it into an algorithm, which calculates a score between 300 and 850. The scoring companies are pulling from the same 3 credit reports, but the scores don't always come out the same. One company's algorithm might put more emphasis on the length of your credit history. The longer you've had access to credit, the higher your score. Another company might put slightly more emphasis on the mix of accounts. The more variety, the higher the score. Other factors include payment history. On-time payments mean higher scores. For loans like mortgages and student loans, lower account balances mean higher scores. And for credit card accounts, the percentage of my credit that I actually use. The lower that percentage, the better. Credit scoring companies make money the same way that credit reporting companies do, by selling your score to landlords, lenders, employers, and others willing to pay for it. Lenders use that information to determine whether to loan us money for a house, a car, or a college education. They also use that number to figure out how much we should pay for that loan. A lender looks at a low credit score, decides I'm a risky borrower, and charges me a higher interest rate than my neighbor with a higher score. And this is where things get tricky for a couple of reasons.
All right, bitch.
First, there's a lot of history baked into that credit score that doesn't show up on a credit report. And second, it's not just lenders who are looking at this information and making decisions that can affect my life. We're going to get into all that, but first, a quick note from the people at Secret.
Student loans can really make you sweat. Only 1 in 3 students understand the financial terms of their loans, and
I hate that they're doing this now, bro. They're doing this now. They're doing advertising content that's like native, and it also has the same vibes of a Vox.com article. And it's so nasty that they're doing a video on like fucking credit scores and shit, and then they literally do an explainer, deodorant explainer that like sells you on repackaging loans, like refinancing.
So how did we get the credit system that we have today? Well, like a lot of systems in the US, we need to go back and look at the past to understand the present.
This is so funny. Are we really stressing out about this when China out here giving people social scores? He said 400 point club. Brother, this video basically describes this is identical to the fucking social credit structure that America claims China has, like the worst aspect of it. And then you turn around and you openly recognize that you are a recipient of the worst aspects of this fucking structure. And still in your mind, you're like, well, things surely must be worse in China though. You literally said that and didn't even recognize like, what the fuck does China have to do with this shit? Like it has nothing to do with this shit. Yeah, things are awful in fucking Rwanda too, but we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about America.
For most of American history, creditworthiness was really a function of your personal character. Whether the community and people who were interacting with you believed you to be a trustworthy, honest, dependable person. My name is Josh Lauer. I'm a professor of media studies at the University of New Hampshire in the Department of Communication.
He's also the author of this book, Creditworthy, A History of Credit in the United States. In this interpersonal credit system, a dressmaker in Boston might buy fabric from a general store on credit, which the storekeeper bought from a local textile mill on credit, who bought the...
I love how stupid you are for saying this is like when we talk about NATO, but then you randomly bring us America bad. Yeah. It's really weird when I'm talking about NATO and then you randomly bring up America in the conversation. What does America have to do with NATO? It's so weird how I'm having a conversation about, I don't know, the CIA. And then you have to say that America is somehow involved in this conversation.
The cotton from his second cousin, a planter in Georgia, on credit. Those lines of credit were built on personal relationships. The thing is, there was a lot of labor happening behind the scenes to make those credit relationships possible. From the enslaved people whose labor created the planter's wealth, to the literal children working in the mill, to the unpaid or underpaid care work that made the store owner and dressmaker's businesses possible. Those people weren't part of this credit system, which has ramifications for the system we have today. We'll get more into that later on, but this whole interpersonal credit system, it really starts to break down after the Civil War.
And it's a period where you have people who are moving around, you have new transportation systems, and so you had people who want to have business relationships with people in more faraway places that they've never met, and they have no basis for understanding what their reputation is, and most importantly, whether or not they could be trusted to repay a debt that was given to them.
In the 1870s, you start to see these handwritten credit reports. This one is for R.H. Macy, founder of Macy's department store. The business is a lucrative one. They pay everything in 10 and 30 days and never owe much. Reports like these were meant for other merchants or lenders, people who didn't know Macy but were considering whether to do business with him. Soon, books like this one let retailers share information about their customers with each other.
I don't know why I always thought Macy's was a woman. Like, when she just said him, I'm like, what?
Like whether P.D. Jones of Brooklyn paid on time and should be offered credit. By the 1950s, those reports looked like this. Investigators working for the credit bureaus indicated race using the dubious categories of the time, as well as character, habits, and morals. According to one training manual, investigators working for the credit bureaus were instructed to uncover whether a borrower was promiscuous, and if so, the extent of partners, as well as possible homosexuality, both of which were considered legitimate reasons to deny someone access to credit.
There were many women who couldn't get credit cards or couldn't get opening a credit account because the accounts were always in a man's name. And there were minorities who could not get credit accounts because it was a racist credit economy.
Banks will not lend money for a Negro to purchase in other than.
Ben Shapiro has literally described this practice as totally just because black people are not good with money. He has actually said that. Well, not for this, specifically redlining, which is even worse. It's kind of wild how much shit you can get away with when you are a right-wing reactionary and a virulent racist that people just like completely forget about. It is kind of wild. Now compare that to like any ostensibly or even tangentially leftist content creator. As a matter of fact, someone doesn't even have to be a leftist at all. Someone could just be a woman and therefore considered woke or is just not mean, for example, right? And they can't get away with shit. Like, even if someone perceives you as doing something bad, they will fucking rip you forever.
Than what is termed settled areas. Those are areas where there is already a Negro population.
So these two things ultimately lead to the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, and that begins to regulate the kinds of information that can even be considered in credit decisions.
But just because categories like race, gender, and sexuality are no longer officially included in credit reports, it doesn't mean that they can't show up in other ways. For example, we know that black workers are more likely than white workers to be let go during a recession. So that means that employment history can end up being a proxy for race that does show up on our credit reports.
If you are more likely to be let go in a downturn and be let go earlier than your counterparts, then you're going to have an employment history that looks as if you're not as stable. If you are in a neighborhood whose homes have not appreciated at the same rate as people in other neighborhoods that have nothing to do with the quality of the home, or whether or not you've been paying on the home. Suddenly, you just don't look as if you are in as good a position as some others for taking on certain types of debt.
I love the chat. I don't even know what this is about, but this person immediately jumps and says, yeah, he's ableist, bro. Sometimes the chat just chats against one another, and the results are fucking hilarious, you know?
Being entrusted with certain kinds of credit.
When my grandfather returned home from the Korean War, he got a cheap federally backed mortgage that was not available to the black soldiers that he served with. And when he died and his kids sold the house, part of that money went to my dad, who used it to get a cheap mortgage and build a good credit history. And if you multiply that story by millions of families across the country, you can start to see how the impact of racist policies can reverberate for generations after the laws themselves have been repealed.
You have an entire history of exclusion that gets excluded in the moment that a history of credit is being assessed.
Today, more than half of black adults have a credit score below 650, which means they're usually charged significantly higher interest rates for a 30-year mortgage than someone with a higher score. And credit scores don't just lock people out of affordable mortgages. More than half of all employers in the US say that they consult an applicant's credit history when hiring. So, how can we fix the credit system to account for these disparities? Lawmakers in some cities and states have started by outlawing the use of credit scores to make decisions that aren't about lending money, like hiring and promotions or car insurance. People without a credit history or with a low score, they might still be engaging in creditworthy activities, like taking part in an informal lending circle, where friends each contribute a set amount each month and then every person gets the full payout once.
Yeah, motherfuckers be like, social credit is bad, bro, in China. It's like, bro, are you tuning from fucking Shanghai? Fuck you mean social credit's bad in China? Are you in Beijing, motherfucker? You're in America. Who gives a fuck? It's just a way to literally, personally make yourself feel like the situation that's in front of you is not as bad because some fucking country that you're never going to go to has a worse system is what you're thinking. You know what I mean? You live in America? What do you think? Where do you think I live? Yes, I live in America. No, I'm pulling a fucking Ian Miles Chong. I'm in Malaysia, LARPing as though I live in America. Oh, the only reason why you bring that shit up is the only reason why people bring that shit up about China is unironically so they don't think about what's happening in front of their eyes. Like, oh, there's a hypothetical place where things are much worse. And that's supposed to make you feel better about your prospects. Most of the time, people do that to dumb you down. But here in the Hasanabi broadcast, people do it to themselves, you know? You don't have to worry about the Chinese social credit. You got to worry about your own shit. Makes no sense.
One option might be to empower local credit unions or nonprofits to formalize these circles and report those payments to credit monitoring agencies, which could help participants build good credit histories. A few startups are even trying to bypass the traditional credit scoring system altogether. Instead, they're making loans based on rent payment histories and other data.
If you want your kids to go to college and you don't come from wealth, then you're probably choosing to engage in a credit system and to engage in debt. If I don't have my credit card with me, it's going to be hard to check into a hotel. It's going to be hard to rent a car.
Access to credit has really become a necessary key for participating in American life. And the system we have today reflects a history in which not everyone had access to that key. When I look to YouTube for solutions for this problem, a lot of the fixes are aimed at individuals. Tips and tricks for boosting your score and fixing your credit. And that stuff is helpful. But if we're going to level the playing field and give more people a fair shot, we're gonna have to think bigger.
The issue is as deep as the government printing money. Wow.